But there's something different that has happened in America. Something different that's happening in this world. Something that's even in some ways happening to our churches. Not too long ago, I was at one of our bookstores, and I purchased a DVD called The Mark of a Cult in one of our bookstores. And I went through and I watched it because for me, I do a lot of work with occult crimes and ritual abuse, and I like to be up to date on what people are putting out there, and I'm fairly well versed in it. I put it in and started watching it, and I was shocked. Because here in 2010, it is being publicized that the Seventh-day Adventists are a cult. And I went through and I decided, okay, I'm going to listen to what they have to say. And as I went through listening to what was being said and listening to what was there and watching what they were saying, it was created by an apologetics group, Baptist in origin, but funded by a Catholic organization. And I listened to everything they said, and I was like, wow, are they trying to distance themselves that much from who they are? And so what I wanted to do is share with you just a piece about where things are at. And for my children, as far as for them to have confidence, because the greatest thing that I find people saying is we're a cult. And what I've found is that they believed a lie. And without a shadow of a doubt, I want to present it to you here and everyone else what exactly a cult is. Because either they're telling the truth or they have posed the greatest hoax that has ever happened on this planet. They use BITE, B-I-T-E. This is a cult identification model that is used to be able to identify what a cult is. BITE, the first letter being B, stands for this: behavior control. It's when a leadership controls the behavior of an organization. That's the first initial identification of what a cult is. My understanding is there was a church that said by their divine order, that is why they were willing to change the Sabbath into Sunday, and that they believed that it was divinely ordered that man could do it. How can man change something that was spoken by God? Where God said, I will never change what I've spoken. What I said, he will never change it. Therefore, why would he ordain a man to be able to change it for him? Behavior control by leadership. The I in BITE, meaning, and the BITE actually stands for individuals that are taking a bite out of the true gospel. Yeah. I stands for this: information control. Organizations that are willing to control the information that is provided through Scripture, or even the fact that they're not willing to do things. They do things in secrecy. They do things with a lack of transparency. That is the second identification of a cult. The third was this: thought control. And that is being able to speak or preach or present a gospel that is different than that which is here. The fourth one is E, standing for emotional control. Because if you don't believe their gospel, you're shamed into it. You know, it's interesting that people would say, okay, that I'm a legalist. But isn't it interesting that they would have to use laws, legal laws, in order to endorse their Sunday keeping? That's legalism. That's true legalism. If you really want to do the math, it works like this. When you're looking at whether something's a lie or the truth, ask him this question: is it adding to Scriptures? Or is it subtracting from that which is given to us in Scriptures? Does it multiply works that are not given to us by the Holy Scriptures? And does it divide truth into error? Add it up. What you're going to find is that it does not add up to what is there. As a matter of fact, what you're going to find is that those that worship for Sunday are preaching a different gospel within Scriptures. That is the cult. The ones that are willing to follow Scriptures to the T, and what God has given, what the apostles have given, what the disciples followed, they are not the cult. They are the remnant. They're the ones that are seeking to love God with their whole heart And by loving them, they do what? They keep his commandments. Never let someone shame you for loving God so much that you're willing to obey him. Never. It's interesting because as I look through this, there's some changes happening in America today. There's organizations that are moving its way and positioning its way to change things, to make things happen, not because of what God said, but because of what man wants. See, a big difference as far as legalism is the fact that, grace is really the fact that we're doing things with God in God's what he has for us. Legalism is what man's efforts to actually do things in place of that. As I was reading, I was shocked with some of the things that I saw going on. One of the things I read was the fact that a Catholic priest has said to his parish, said basically, I'll give anybody here $1,000 if they could show to me in scriptures the exact reference where Sabbath was changed to Sunday. He says, you won't find it. There's an Adventist minister who's given $1 million, and he was criticized saying, what's an Adventist minister have $1 million for? He put $1 million out there saying, show me through scriptures that it was changed. He says, I'll never lose my $1 million because you will not find it in this book. You will not find it. Here's something that totally shocked me, was by Howard B. Rand. And if this doesn't put a shiver up your spine, I don't think anything else will. Because when I read it, my knees got weak. As a nation, and this is an individual actually promoting this as legislation to our United States Congress. Okay? As a nation, we are suffering in many ways, economically and otherwise, for failure to establish and enforce the observance by all people of a Sabbath to be uniformly observed throughout the length and breadth of its land. If, as a nation, we would escape the doldrum and the increase of troubles, God's heavy hand rests heavily upon his people in opposition to the Sunday, the nationally declared Sabbath, we must cease. Its duty of governing to enforce the observance of Sabbath-keeping requirements. By national decree, the legislative enactment, Sunday, following the 6 days of labor, was established as the Sabbath of our nation. The so-called blue laws were passed to enforce and keep that day holy. Here's the part that got me. You ready? We hold that the Sabbatarians are definitely responsible for contributing to the increased desecration of this nation, of this national appointed Sabbath day. This was brought before Congress. What shocks me is the fact that they're willing to blame those that worship on Sabbath for Katrina, for 9/11, for the earthquakes. All the natural disasters upon the face of this earth is blamed on those that keep the Sabbath. That it is their response of not keeping Sunday as the holy day as God's judgment on this earth. You know what amazes me? 150 years ago, a little woman prophesied this. And in your lifetime, it is now coming true. It's a wonderful thing to know that Christ is coming soon. It's a wonderful thing knowing that just on the evidence alone shows that something is coming. It's interesting that man has to be able to use manly human laws to enforce something that was never ordained by God. And yet us as God's people do not need a law to enforce it. We just take God at his word. He said it, I believe it, that's all there is to it. At his word. Yet man is continually trying to do that which is different. Let me share just a summary of that, of which the Sabbath is all about to me. One is this, there's 7 points, that it is a perpetual memorial of creation. We talked about the month, the year, and the day. Every single Sabbath day that you come to worship God and to bless him, it's about him. And it reminds us of who our Creator is, not man. It is a symbol of redemption, a rest from bondage. See, we're not saved by the Sabbath, but because we're saved, we worship on the Sabbath day. It was Christ that saved us. It is a sign of sanctification. If God blessed the Sabbath day, he didn't bless the first day, he blessed the Sabbath day. If he pronounced it holy, sanctified, when you're coming to worship with him, on what day do you receive it? If you choose to worship on any other day, you can't receive the blessing of God.